Portsmouth Community Network Broadband Authority. We'll begin with our agenda. Well, welcome everybody. Feel like I haven't seen you in a while. And welcome our city manager, Mr. Stephen Carter, to the meeting. All right, we're glad to begin. And we'll begin with our roll call with Madam Secretary.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Barnes is absent. Mr. Hugel?
Here.
Mr. Moody is absent. Mr. Tillett?
Here.
Dr. Whitaker is absent. Madam Chair?
I am here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next order of business is for us to adopt our agenda, adoption of our minutes, pardon me, and they are connected. I'm sorry, we're gonna skip that, okay, until we have a call.
That's right.
Okay, all right, so we'll move past that and move to our discussion section, and that update will include first, our Portsmouth Community Local Fiber Ring, and I yield the floor to our IT Director, Cliff Hayes.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and good evening to the members of the authority, Mr. Manager, Madam Clerk. Today we have a brief update to provide for you, one in which will include the Portsmouth Community Broadband Network status for our local fiber network, as well as provide for you an update regarding the regional ring that we are part of. As I said, with the Portsmouth Community Broadband Network status, we have completed 50 of 52 miles of the fiber ring here locally. Of course, that's all conduit, as well as having full fiber and have tested that fiber as well. We do have two small areas that we need to complete, one of which is along College Drive, in which we are working in agreement with the city of Suffolk. And we just need, on their end, we're going to need a signature from them. And having spoken to them lately, that should be forthcoming really soon. High Street Bridge, Churchland Bridge, much of that work on the bridge itself is completed. However, speaking with our construction contractor, Danella, there are some things that they're trying to work out with VDOT in order to pull the fiber across through that conduit just across the Churchland Bridge. After which, we'll be able to begin the process of lighting up our government anchor institutions, our facilities, our buildings, etc. We expect, because we do have all equipment in hand, that we'll be able to have that process begin no later than, say, the first part of November, if not sooner. And then, of course, with regards to our regional ring, in which we are a 1/5 partner in, the total, this is just for the edification of some of you that may not remember that particular detail, as well as our city manager who's with us now, to update him on some of this as well, that the ring is 119 miles of conduit at this point. In the city of Norfolk, we have some 18 of 21 and a half miles completed of that conduit. In Suffolk, 25 of 36 miles completed. Chesapeake, 18 of 19 miles completed. Of course, that's the Chesapeake co-bill. Chesapeake has more of a local ring that they'll continue to work on as well after that point. City of Virginia Beach, there are 3.5 miles of the 36 miles completed. And for the entire regional ring, they'll start pushing fiber through that conduit July 1. And that's the update that we have this evening. Didn't know if you all have any questions regarding our local ring, the regional ring, et cetera. I would add, if there are, well, not sure if there are any questions first. I'll start there, Madam Chair.
Okay. Members, are there any questions? Mr. Hubel.
Thanks for that, Mr. Hayes. So back to the local ring. So we have nearly all of it installed. I think the piece across the Churchland Bridge is only needed for redundancy, right?
Correct.
So you say that we're going to begin construction in November. I assume that means putting the hardware at either end of the fiber. Is the fiber in the conduit now in the local ring?
Everywhere except for those two
Okay. So
spots.
what has to happen? I mean, why not now as opposed to November to start installing the hardware at either end of the fiber to start connecting the city network through this new fiber network?
Yeah, actually, the switches are able to start to be installed now. So we'll start that process, and it'll be ongoing. Running the laterals out to our individual buildings, there's a process there that we'll have to take in order to get those lit up. So all of our places, well, I can't say all of them, most of them right now are connected through Cox. And so we'll take the process of connecting them to our ring, which ultimately is going to have to get to our ISP at the data center in Virginia Beach. So we'll start that process. One, we will need to be able to connect to that ISP for one. And after that, we'll actually begin lighting up our individual government anchor institutions. Otherwise, they won't be able to connect to the internet.
So right now we're riding, I mean, all of our IT communications are riding on Cox network, yes?
That is correct.
So presumably then if we shift off of Cox network and all we need from Cox is one connection into our network so that we have access to the internet from our network, then presumably the savings start because now we're writing our own hardware and not theirs, right?
Correct.
When do we start seeing, I mean, when are we going to have the city up and running on our stuff and start seeing the savings by walking away from using the Cox network?
So we'll begin, it's a process, so it won't, at the flip of a switch, everybody be on. It'll happen as we connect each individual building one at a time. There are, I'll say, some city facilities even now that we already use that are on the fiber ring now.
Okay.
Mainly downtown. We have our police headquarters there on High Street, our 911 center, the fire admin building is on our fiber now. But again, that's not redundant, but we'll end up completing that part when we get those other two connections out in Churchland Bridge and the College Drive, Suffolk right-of-way that we'll have to cross over to get into. And that'll make the ring fully redundant at that time.
Okay, and so when we built the 25 budget, did we assume at some point during FY25 that we would divest from Cox and collect those savings?
I can tell you that that's going to be a longer process than the FY25 budget is going to be able to support. When you start doing this, actually to get the work done, equipment installed, tested, and the actual facility operational, with the amount of facilities we have to do, no, that won't be completed in the FY25 budget. Incrementally, yes, but collectively, no.
Okay. Do we have a plan mapped out for when we're going to be done?
I'll let Ed take to the build process. So
So the complete process, everything fully,
I'll call it the intranet, the Portsmouth local network.
we have a plan to finish it, but of course, certain things have caused us to be delayed and so forth. One being that Churchland Bridge, that was 2 years behind on the completion of that bridge. And still, even now, we're still waiting for VDOT on the actual ability to use that conduit underneath the bridge to get across. I've reached out.
So I'm tracking with you on the Churchland Bridge and those delays, but that doesn't really have any impact in building out, connecting this building to police headquarters, to the schools, to whatever. So, I mean, the Churchland Bridge thing's going to be old news, presumably by November when this is done. But we got all the rest of this build out to do that is months down the road. So the Churchland Bridge thing is just a distraction from what does the plan say we're gonna be at least done building out our piece of the network.
So I can tell you the consultant that we have is working on connecting our buildings, and that's going to take a design in order to do so. And so Mr. Biku probably can better answer that when we would have that proposal before us. This is Mr. Jeff Biku. He's our consultant from Broadband Telecom Services.
What are you guys doing? So to answer the question, we are in the middle of working on a plan. There's not just a matter of connecting the facilities. You're talking about redundancy, talking about network equipment, making sure that when a network goes up, that is 100% of plus capacity. So one of the key things we're trying to work on is getting a schedule going to when that Global Links 10 gigabit pipe will be active, because that's going to be the prime feed. It's going to be able to feed off to the rest of your buildings. So as that link is up and running, then we'll be able to actually incrementally turn the other buildings on and disconnect the Cox circuit. So we'll have a plan, we'll have a schedule at the next meeting.
Okay. Next meeting.
Yep.
June 11th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So I had one that was kind of along the line of his last question about the process. So are there any contingencies with the other, we're 1/5 of the partners, so the other localities and their networks, are we still ahead of that game, or are any of the other entities catching up or doing a fair job with getting online as well?
You're speaking to the regional?
Southside Regional.
The Southside
Yes.
Regional Ring. We were pretty much one of the first to kind of get where we were in the posture that we're in. In fact, I don't want to steal any of the thunder of the work session, but during the work session, we'll go over an arrangement, an agreement that we also have with the Regional Ring. As planned out, there was the opportunity for us with some of our excess capacity to offer that to the regional group,
Okay.
if they so needed it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I'll leave the rest for the actual work session.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess you all attend the Southside Regional Broadband Authority and just want to see how they were coming along at all, if they're far along in the process for the entire regional ring to be completed, or is that just going to be our hold up until everyone else, the other 1/5 of the partners are done?
Yeah, we're still moving on with ours. I'll defer to Kelsey, Attorney
Yes.
Swinnergy.
So the regional ring, it was a little delayed from their initial anticipated completion date of the summer. I think now they're looking at about November due to some issues in Virginia Beach. It's very congested there because of all the fiber, and they had to redo some permits. But that's been the only issue so far. They've already completed most of the conduit installation, which is the time-consuming part. So right now, they're looking at a November completion date. and I don't believe there's been any significant cost increases to that either, which is pretty impressive.
Also be aware that the fully completion of that ring does not deter our ring from being fully operational.
Yeah.
Once there is a link between us and Virginia Beach, that allows us to have the link that the gentleman spoke about. Now, and I'm thinking that's supposed to be up sooner than that, because I think Norfolk was talking about actually being the first one to actually light up a piece of that ring in the near future here. So once that is complete, what I'm trying to say is the whole ring don't have to be done
Right.
for us to start utilizing the benefits from it.
And I guess that's what I was getting at. Will any of that be contingent on us moving forward with what we need to do with the
I
south
think
side?
the pieces that is really critical for us to get on are complete, or just about complete. The portions that's being held up in Virginia Beach itself is really for just to complete the connection of the whole ring.
Okay.
So, a couple of meetings ago, we set rates for other folks to use our excess infrastructure. Have we started marketing to stakeholders in the city? And if so, have we gotten any interest yet? Anybody communicated with you guys looking for the opportunity to use our excess capacity besides the regional ring?
In the way of marketing, we have not. We've had conversations with the Director of Economic Development and trying to push it from him. I've also talked to our marketing department, Mr. Glagloda, and he'll be helping in that effort as well. Just by very nature of us having an authority, this has been going on, this conversation publicly since 2017. There are some who are already aware of what we had, and we have also had interest from a couple just trying to figure out whether or not it's advantageous for them at this point. They're trying to figure out the routes that we have, connection points that we have, and how they may be able to benefit from it. So we have had some interest from a couple.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, is there a best use practice of how you market it? I guess our marketing department and our economic development authority would be able to determine that. I mean, it's not like this is something you put in the newspaper or on eBay. I mean, I know there's a specific route that you go to market something like this.
Yeah, that group has its own ecosystem.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
just putting it in the newspaper, that's not where guys looking to buy dark fiber
Right.
go to look for a sale on dark fiber. You know, so that has its own ecosystem, and you're really going to need to have some people that specialize in that area
Right.
if you want effective marketing.
That's correct. Sure.
And we'll add also, I'm pretty sure you're aware of Mr. Carter's background, but to take it a step further, not only a background with IT, but he has actually run a fiber network where he comes from, so he comes with a wealth of knowledge in that regard.
Okay. So we're in good shape. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we'll proceed with our agenda, and we'll go back up to the section to adopt our minutes, and they are before you, so if you want to take a look, and if there's any changes, I entertain a motion to correct those, and if there are none, I entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and properly second. Madam Secretary, if you will call the vote.
Mr. Barnes is absent. Mr. Hugo?
Aye.
Mr. Lee is absent. Mr. Tillage?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mrs. Lucasberg?
Yes.
Thank you.
We have adopted our minutes. And next up, we'll proceed again with our discussion under the digital equity plan. And Mr. Hayes, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Next, we have up to give us an update regarding the digital equity planning grant activities. Mr. Jeff Biku, who's with Broadband Telecom Services. Mr. Biku?
So this is a plan to put a plan together. So it's a Digital Equity Planning Activities Grant.
There you go.
So the initial plan is actually to get a maximum of 25,000 per locality to put a plan together for the Virginia Affordability and Adoption Planning Grant, which is gonna it's gonna be about a year from now when that grant comes out. But this is all DHCD. DHCD has the initial local DE plan has about $1 million allocated towards localities. And of their graciousness, they're allocating money that goes towards the marketing, goes towards the consultants, to put a decent plan together to meet the governor's, universal coverage, broadband coverage plan. So there's $30 million of digital capacity grants that's going to be available, and that's what this $25,000 is for. It's actually to put a plan together for the $30 million that's out there for the capacity grants. And we've already started working on the plan, and the plan will be submitted by the 15th, which is tomorrow. Next one, Cliff. So the initial scope is to develop a written strategic marketing plan to attract interested businesses as well as enhance community engagement and the digital options. So back to one of the questions that was asked before about how we're going to market this, there's going to be a joint effort between the different departments, which is going to be like economic development, working with the different anchor institutions, identifying unserved areas, identifying needs. That's all going to go into the master plan that's actually going to go towards that $30 million. They're going to focus on strategy for digital adoption, digital equity, closing the digital divide, looking at neighborhoods and businesses of unserved and underserved areas. So all that is going to be a collaborative effort between all of us to kind of come up with the information. Again, working with economic development is going to be a key to that as well. Identifying strategic growth areas that where economic development wants to develop more of marketing and attract more local businesses that can utilize the fiber ring. All that's going to be part of this. Next one. Targeted digital equity covered populations are impoverished, elderly, incarcerated veterans, rural minorities, language barriers, and disabilities. These are typical populations that actually need are looking for digital equity planning. So what are the tenets of the DE? So it's access, affordability, adoption, and advancement. Telehealth's always been a big one. Sea level rise has been a huge initiative in the Hampton Roads area. So all the key projects that most of the regional cities are working on is also going to be a collaborative effort. So if we're working on sea level rise for Portsmouth, we're probably going to incorporate some of that into Norfolk and Virginia Beach and Suffolk. Digital literacy, how do we teach our residents about security, especially with AI coming out and all these technology agnostic platforms coming out. There has to be some kind of education levels on it. So all that will be part of the digital equity planning. So the next steps would be to do an asset inventory, create a needs assessment, implementation, and then monitoring of the outcomes. Ongoing engagement of meetings with partners and citizens. So that goes back to again the fiber ring. The assets we have is a fiber ring. Our anchor institutions, which are going to be economic development again. Reaching out to some of our other unserved. Actually talking to DHCD about areas of need in this area. So all that is going to come together in this plan. Asset inventory, GIS baseline. So GIS is a huge part of this. So we're going to end up having a map that's going to show all the demographics and list all the existing city partner activities that's current and ongoing for this plan. Go ahead, Cliff. And again, an organization that's going to be providing input on this is state government agencies, community-based faith organizations, planning district, commissions, the school systems, higher education, large and small businesses, community anchor institutions. Virginia Community Action Partnership, that's a big one. Healthcare professionals and the Board of Workforce Development, which is another big one. And the usage of the grant funds. The grant will be used to subsidize the consultant cost of the city. It will also be used to, for software survey activities. Could be any marketing that we put out there, any surveys, Survey Monkey, as long as we can get enough data back to put it in the master plan. All right, good. Next steps, submit the plan, which is going to be tomorrow, create a Portsmouth project team for core input, and engage stakeholders and community organizations. That's it. Questions?
Questions? So, Dr. Whitaker and then Mr. Hugo.
Yeah, so Mr. Biko, you were saying that this is a plan for a greater plan, the greater plan being the 30 million?
Yeah.
Okay, so that 30 million plan, will it be more advantageous of getting that if you are attracting more persons under this needs basis?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the categories that are listed here, is that governed by the grant, or are these categories that?
Those are categories we came up with,
Okay.
and we'll add to those categories as we put this plan together.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's not set in
Oh,
stone.
okay.
So the DACD is saying, put your best foot forward.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what because Portsmouth has a different need than Virginia Beach
Right.
and Norfolk, right? So let's put our best foot forward, identify the needs in each city, and then put that into the plan.
So on your list, would the Alice population be one that should be considered as part of the list there?
That's impoverished.
The
Alice
Yeah, the asset limited, income constrained,
gotcha. Yeah.
employed.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. You done?
Yeah, I was just curious. I
Yeah,
didn't see it
about
up
the
there.
list, exactly.
I know that Portsmouth has a
A huge
huge
population of
population of
Alice.
Alice.
So yeah, again, and this is why we're going to create a group also. So then we're going to, hopefully each one of our meetings, we're going to, kind of give an update. Because this plan is not going to be due for next year. So we'll keep on bringing more information, any advice or any information you guys have, and we'll definitely add it to the plan. But it's a gathering information, And this 25,000, the maximum it's a rolling, so it's first come, first served. So that's why we want to get it as soon as possible. But it is all the cities are applying for it. It's rolling every month. It's available until the money is done. So there's $1 million allocated towards that initially, and then that's going to roll into the 30 million for the DE plan.
Mr. Hugo, you have the floor.
Thank you. Could we go to the DE plan step slide, please? There we go. Okay, so as I recall, the feds did some survey and decided how much help Portsmouth needed and where. And then it was on us to do our own survey to either validate or contradict what the feds did. And all of that had to be done by this past February. Isn't that all right?
So that's the BEAD plan. That's the BEAD funding. That's really not for this grant. That's for the unserved areas, the challenge process, basically identifying what the census blocks say is unserved and then challenging the providers. And because a lot of areas that the providers say is served, we're saying they're not served. And that's what that whole challenge process was about. So the results came back March actually, and they're still working through they've got all the challenge data in, and they're going to publicize it in the next couple of weeks, hopefully by the end of the month.
Okay, and so is BEAD federal funding?
Well, it's all federal funding, but they allocate X amount of money to the states.
And do we get BEAD funding through this Virginia Affordability and Adoption Planning Grant, or is there some other?
That's a different grant. BEAD is completely separate.
So what do we have to do to get our oar in the water for BEAD funding?
So the BEAD funding there's two parts to the BEAD funding. The service provider themselves are the ones that once the challenge comes back, they're the ones that are supposed to apply for the areas that are unserved in the different cities. So we are hoping that the SNA and GTS, and we're working with them closely on that they, as a service provider, will apply for the BEAD funding through HRPDC, because as a regional effort, it makes it easier to get that funding. So we looked at the census blocks. Each city has different census blocks. And come back, if they come back to the area and say, okay, there's 1,000 homes in Portsmouth that need to get allocated towards BEAD funding, then GTS will take that and put it into the whole pot and then apply for that funding. That's the way it's supposed to be.
If I may, Madam Chair, Councilman Hugel, right now, there's a lot of ambiguity around where that funding, how that funding is actually going to be allocated. As you recall, it was $1.48 billion that was determined that will come to Virginia. And the state literally set up a process for measuring, which was their initial thought for how they would determine who would get what. But there's been some argument around how long that was opened up. For lack thereof, it wasn't long enough for a lot of folks. And so everything that we hear is that there wasn't a whole lot of participation going on with that process. So the question is now how that allocation is going to take place. There are certain categories that will be prioritized, but we're not certain, as opposed to how it was presented from the very beginning. The intent was to use the speed test. Recall I gave that presentation, and the intent was across the Commonwealth, in every locality, right on down to address, right, what the speeds were. And so they wanted every citizen to have the process to go online, and if they connected with that website, it would automatically garner what the speed was at that connection. The hope was you would have gotten enough participation that it would begin to plot where there's controversy with the federal map versus what speeds they actually had an opportunity to test. Since they did not get enough participation from each address that they had desired as a strategy, the question is what's going to happen at this point. And so there's a broadband conference that the state is hosting this week, actually, and I plan to attend that on Thursday and Friday in Richmond, and that's going to hopefully give us an idea of what the intent is going to be going forward, since there was not this mass participation that they had anticipated. Okay, so what model are you going to use now in order to allocate these funds?
Okay, and I mean, the intent of BEAD was to deliver digital equity, right? To identify the places where people are underserved by digital access and encourage the providers to fix it. So got it that it's money to the providers to upgrade their stuff so that everybody in Portsmouth has access, real access to the same bandwidth and speed. So what's different about Virginia Affordability and Adoption Planning Grant from BEAD? I mean, we're doing the same thing, right? So we're trying to get digital equity by figuring out according to our demographics, where we have pockets of underserved neighborhoods to kind of bring those neighborhoods up to snuff. So I'm
The BEAD is more underserved, 25 megabits, 100 megabits, and those are the speeds, and that's what it's based on, is upgrading those areas, right? When we talk about digital equity and digital equity planning, and what this is about, this is more about, again, there's special programs. There could be some areas, like a building that actually needs connections that's not classified as unserved or underserved.
Okay.
Right, but that they need digital equity on. It could be you have a platform where you have a lot of flooding that's going on, and you can identify those areas, and you can start putting sea level rise sensors into there, and that'll be covered under this plan. So any specific project, that's why it's more getting the groups together, identifying, even if there's like strategic growth areas, if you have areas that you want to focus on to bring in businesses because you're developing it, and economic development has an initiative for that, those areas you can you can utilize your fiber ring, use some of this funding to get connections over there and actually market it. So it's specific projects for digital equity.
And does this funding, the funding we're talking about now, does that come to the city?
That's my question.
Okay. And I guess in order to get access to the funding, not only do we have to have a plan for the plan, but then we have to have specific projects identified and do the detailed planning to be able to tell the grant people, hey, this is a specific project and it costs $1 million and we need that money to go do this specific thing.
Correct.
Is the $30 million all of the money in the checkbook for the entire state, or is that money set aside just for Portsmouth?
No, for the entire state.
Okay, so that's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, drop in the bucket. So.
But the idea, I think, is to go after whatever resources that are available for us, and we'll piece it and sew it all together for our benefit overall. There are all kinds of, I don't know if all of the, prior to BEAD, the state here had some $700 million for broadband deployment that was available, and I'm not sure that all ended up being deployed. And then on top of that, now we have this $1.48 billion. So there are all kinds of sources, grants, funding mechanisms that we're trying to go after to benefit the city here.
Yeah, this feels like we're getting ready to spend a lot of money to get a little bit of money back for the return.
So there's no matching funds on this at all.
Yeah.
So it is free, clear money, just so long as you use it to put together a decent plan.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Dr. Whitaker, you have the floor.
Speak on, during our previous discussion on the BEAD funding, I believe there was some indication that the federal government had identified what the poverty levels were, or the underserved areas were, probably better term, and that we were going to challenge it or try to see if those figures are correct or not, and it was some mapping that was going to be done. Has that process been completed, or is that part of the bigger BEAD?
So when you talk about unserved, there's two lanes on it, right? One is the meeting the minimum bandwidth requirements, which is, of course, the 25 megabits. There's some places that have 10 megabits, but if you don't meet the 100, so they set a criteria for 100 over 20. So if you're not meeting the 100 over 20, you're classified as unserved, right, for broadband access. But when you're talking about unserved residents and poverty limit, that would probably fall under this plan right here, as to identifying those areas. And because right now, so they one of the things about the digital equity planning and the subsidies, right? So service providers now, they don't have to, one of the big things with BEAD was there was supposed to be a subsidy, like they're supposed to have a low-cost option for underserved areas, right? Part of the big, huge issue that we've had over the last couple months was was removed. So there is no additional funding that the federal government is giving to service providers. They have to come up with their own plan and say, okay, if you are living in an unserved area and you want to offer a low-cost alternative, it's $30 or whatever, for 50 megabits, and that's the low-cost plan. But the federal government is not forcing anyone to do that anymore, right? So now it's basically a free-for-all, and they can go and these service providers can go and and get the federal money, but they don't have any low-cost plans. Part of the point scoring that they're going to get for when they do apply is if they have a low-cost plan, then DHCD will look at them on a favorable basis and say, okay, this is good because you're still taking care of the community. But I think the plan also would be to identify, how you can get some of these areas that you're talking about where it's unserved because of poverty and create plans that actually can help some of these neighborhoods.
And that would be under the B portion.
No, that would be under
This portion.
right here, yeah.
Question, what percentage of the 30 million has Portsmouth applied for? I mean, did we put a number on how much we can't greedily ask for the whole 30 million, but did we say that a number?
No, so we estimate, with the localities, we're probably going to end up applying for like a $1.2 million in this grant over here. Again, it's only 30 million that's sitting out there for all the localities in Virginia. So you kind of have to, spread it out. And if you ask for too much, you're not going to get it.
Right.
So, just by preliminary assessment, we're saying maybe 1.1 will give us a good number that we could start some of these projects and get them up and running.
Okay, and then the digital equity planning part, is this just, so if we find some underserved areas, does that mean that we go in and offer them equipment? How are the funds going to be used to level?
However, we put it in a plan. So
Okay.
if that's what the authority says, this is a good idea,
Yeah.
and we can give some equipment in there for these unserved areas.
Right.
Then absolutely, that'll be part of the plan.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So the plan is already written out though, right?
No, so the plan is,
She's submitting tomorrow.
yeah, plan is being submitted tomorrow to get the 25,000.
Okay,
To actually start working on the main, and it's going to take a while because
Yeah.
again, you have to do a lot of community outreach and you have to
Right.
identify needs and and stakeholder assessments and everything else to get to the point where we have a very robust plan that we can submit to, DHC and say, okay, this is what we're doing. So, and I think that, it's a huge benefit because you have HRPDC now, you have a regional fiber ring, you have a local fiber ring. You got a lot of assets that make this a very, lucrative plan that actually will bring in the funding. So,
right. And we're
so
quite
getting-
competitive in this group, being what our needs are.
Absolutely.
Yes, okay. Right.
So the second step in next steps is to create a Portsmouth project team for core input. Who do you envision being on that Portsmouth project team? Is it just you IT guys, or are we looking to get stakeholders from the community involved?
I'll have to take that one.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is the part where we've already had some conversations with our marketing team, Mr. Peter Glagola, and we'll be working closely with him to connect with various communities and come up with some folks to work with in the city to try to be a part of the overall team. It's a community effort as well. So,
I think economic development is going to be a huge part of
yes,
this one too.
Mr.
We're
Donner.
looking to get input from specific neighborhoods? Like, are we going to specific civic leagues to seek input?
That'll be in the form of surveys initially.
Okay.
So putting surveys out there for them to respond to.
Any information or ideas that you all have in terms of who we should potentially reach out to would be helpful. Even if we already have it down, it won't hurt for you to submit that, and then we'll just include it in the part of our, efforts to reach out.
All right, everyone. Okay, no more questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vito. Closed session, we don't have any, okay? All right, and next up is our new business, future business topics. Members, are there any topics of concern that you would like to see in a future meeting?
So I'm wondering, Madam Clerk, if you've gotten any input from anyone looking to come join the authority?
No, sir.
And that was my concern too, because we have in less than 7 months, 3 more members' terms were in,
Yeah.
Right.
and contingent on us getting reelected to our desired positions, there may be 3 more rotating off, in addition to the mayor who resigned the position 2 meetings ago.
And keep in mind, when we put the information out, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Chair. When we put the information out, we were specific in the criteria that we were looking for those that were applying. So we put out their IT backgrounds and, the different backgrounds that's necessary for the decisions that are going to need to be made by the board. So that's out there. We put in our manual the description of what's going to be going on. And that's out there. We're just waiting for people to get on.
To apply back.
Yes,
Okay.
and we do plan to have it on the band. That's on our website, and we're planning to do some other things, but we do have the information out there.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir. Mr. Carter.
Can you send me a copy of what the requirements were that we advertised for that?
Sure.
We don't want to be too exclusive, and IT is not just what you need for.
There were a couple of different criterias that were put out there, but yes, I'll send that to you.
Great, thank you. I think we had the same question. Are any other concerns? Okay, if there are none, our next meeting will be held on June 11th at 4 o'clock. And do we have any speakers who signed up today?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right, then if there are no other concerns or questions, I entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn. Second.
All right, it's been moved and properly seconded that we adjourn. All in favor, let it be known by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right, our meeting is adjourned.